Hello everyone, welcome to THLGK. Today we will be talking about the scientific approach, but more specifically we will be going into a bit more detail about the scientific method itself. And my intention here is to give the definitions of hypothesis, theory, and facts, and attempt to show how I use them in the context of theological religious discussion. When it comes to the scientific analysis of religion, the scientific process starts the very same way, with an observation, with a question. And from those, they raise hypotheses. Hypotheses are an attempt to explain a historical event. So you don't know anything about the historical event, so you attempt to give an explanation. And you can raise many hypotheses about the same question or observation. For instance, we talked in a previous video about Moses. Today, let's use the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes. And the same question, were they real? From that, you can raise hypotheses. Yes, they were real. Maybe they were real. No, they are not real. It's irrelevant if they are real. And you can have as many hypotheses as you can think of. And as you start gathering arguments and evidence to support your hypothesis, the hypothesis will turn into a theory when enough of those are gathered. A theory would be an explanation, a description of a historical event. You see, it's not the historical event itself, but it's an explanation, a description of it. It's a very important distinction. Because again, you can have more than one theory for the same historical event. And you can have both, in this case, what's the right word? Not manage to accomplish the next step, which is turn into a fact. And facts are what happened. Facts are the historical events themselves. So to go for a theory to a fact, you need to prove that the description, the explanation of the historical event happened. Once you prove it, it's a fact. If you are not able to prove it, either you lack sufficient argument, sufficient evidence, or your theory is wrong. That's why I said both theories can fall. Any amount of theories can fall. So this is the process we have to keep in mind when we are talking about religion, especially the sacred text. We have questions, then we raise hypotheses that attempt to explain those questions, attempt to explain a historical event, gather arguments and evidence. When we have enough, they become hypothesis become a theory, which now is a description, an explanation of a historical event. And when the theory can be proven right, it becomes a fact. Let's return to our example. We were talking about the patriarchs. Are they real? To that question, in the sense that as historical figures, did they exist? We don't know the answer. We have hypotheses. I say we. You see, I keep worrying about the words. It's they. When I say we, I say the general we. Humans have the hypothesis because the knowledge is basically shared. But they are the ones who came with the hypothesis. And this, in fact, this is what the reasons for this episode is, because if I don't establish this, I would have to keep interrupting myself every time I said we, every time I said fact, and it would break the flow of the episode. I try to control myself, but I still make mistakes, and I probably will forever. So that's the idea behind this episode. Let's get back to it. So they raised the hypothesis. And this is one of the most important points of the episode. If the scientific approach only has hypothesis, the religion approach can only have hypothesis, because if the religious approach had enough evidence, had enough arguments, acceptable ones, because the criteria, or should I say the criterion for the scientific approach needs to be reached to be considered an argument. It's not an argument to say the Bible claims Abraham existed, thus Abraham existed because the Bible claims. This is circular logic. No, you have to present valid arguments, valid evidence. So if the religious approach had enough, they would have a theory or a fact. And the scientific approach would accept it because they had enough arguments, they have enough evidence. That's not the case. So whenever the scientific approach only presents a hypothesis or a theory, you can be absolutely sure the religious approach can only present the exact same thing. So if you ever hear a religious scholar arguing that a historian or an anthropologist or a sociologist, whatever the field, if what they are presenting are only assumptions, be wary of it, because their religious approach probably only has assumptions that they masquerade as something more. And this is their manipulation game. This is the very important distinction we have to keep in mind. Because when you get to another question, for instance, Is the Abraham in the Bible, is the narrative of Abraham in the Bible real? Now we are no longer in the realm of hypothesis. It's a fact. Those narratives were made up. They are not description of reality. They are not historical accounts. Those are narratives created by a group of people with an objective. So the scientific approach, even though not knowing if Abraham was a real person, and the whole discussion is still in the area of hypothesis, when it comes to this particular question, through literary analysis and other evidence, they came to the conclusion that no, as a matter of fact, the Abraham in the Bible, and you can send that to all characters in the Holy Book, they were made up, regardless if they are based on a real person or not. They are characters created by authors to do what the authors want them to do. Let me give you a modern example. You're going to play a video game, and let's say that video game is 100% historically accurate. It was made 100% historically accurate. You sit to play. The moment you log in, the moment you hit start, and you start playing, it's no longer historical. Because now, the one who is controlling a character that was based on a historical person is you. So you might decide to go talk with random NPC 1, and you go and you talk to them. You might decide to that night sleep on an inn. You might decide the next morning to go to a city. Did the real person did the same things you are doing while playing? No. Because it's no longer a person, it's now a character. This is the whole idea behind this. The characters in the Bible, they move accordingly to the will of the authors, to the idea, in accordance to the ideology of the authors. They do what the authors want them to do. They say what the authors want them to say. They are not real person. That's why we have a distinction between individual historical people that might have existed. In the cases of some, the probability is very low. For instance, the 12 tribes, they did not exist. Jacob, probably not. Isaac, probably not. And Abraham, probably not. We'll talk about them in the future. But they are still hypotheses. We still need to find evidence of their existence. But is that important in the discussion of Christianity, of Judaism, for instance? No, because those in the Bible, the very same people, the Abraham in the Bible, the Isaac in the Bible, the Jacob in the Bible, the 12 tribes in the Bible, those aren't real. This is, I'm keeping it brief, but this is to exemplify the scientific process. While one of the questions, they still are, in the hypothetical stage, on the other, they already reached conclusions. They already have facts. They formulated theories, and then they managed to prove those theories. Or there are things that are still in the theoretical phase. So it's very important to have at least, I'm giving a very basic explanation of the terms. If you are interested, you should look in more depth. But for our purposes, I think this gives us a nice overview of how the scientific process works. Now, why talk about this? As I said in the last video, I kept thinking if I was using the word fact in a way that could give the understanding I was making my opinions as facts. I checked the article. I didn't check the video again, but I checked the article, and in the article I didn't make that particular problem. I had to, as I was editing the article. Thank God I managed to take that out. But in the video I'm not sure, and in the previous videos I'm also not sure. And that's why I decided to clarify this, because as I said, I do think myself as someone who strives to follow the scientific approach. But as I said, I believe it was in the introduction, the scientific approach requires the participation of other people. Because what I can present as a fact to you, it might be simply my opinion of something. It might be flawed, it might be mistaken. I might strive for objectivity, but it still falls short in subjectivity. That's why the scientific process is not an individual process, it's a process of the collective. The individual is present, but it's through the contact with others that we attempt to reach an objective reality. So this is something I really worry about, because it's out of attempting to justify my mistakes. It's something common to do. Oh, as a matter of fact, this is a fact, when in fact I'm talking about my opinions. And I really try to, when I talk about my opinions, I try to be really clear about it. When I'm talking about, as I did in the previous part, where I talk about scientific discoveries, I try to present them as hypotheses, as theories, or as facts. But sometimes I might make mistakes. So I'm striving for eliminating the word fact when I talk about my opinions, and sticking with the word claim. Even if I might think what I'm claiming is logically sound, that I wasn't able to see any flaw in it, someone might, and you are welcome to point it. I mean, to the extent you are pointing it, to come and say you are wrong, or make an affirmation of faith, this is pointless. But if you come and say, look, you made a mistake here, again, it's your opinion, but you point the arguments because of this, and this. If you are right, I will give you credit. I say, I was wrong. I have to fix what I believed. Maybe I have to change everything. Maybe I have to adapt. But this is the process that I enjoy so much. So by defining these terms, and by saying I'm striving to use them separately now, I mean, thankfully this is the 6th video, So not too much time passed with the mistakes happening, and at least in the article it didn't happen. So I won't even listen to the audio again. But this is the state I like to be in. When I'm talking about my opinions, they are my opinions. They are my logical constructions. They are my thoughts. When I'm talking about something that was discovered by scholars, I try to present in that format. And if I make a mistake, hopefully you guys can point that out so I can fix it. That's it for today, everyone. I think this might be the shortest episode yet of this first phase of the channel. But it truly is a very important episode. I will be bringing up these definitions again. I will be talking about these elements again. And I probably will be making mistakes. But I hope that you understand, because I'm not trying to be like them. It would be really, really bad if I were to use the same tactics they do, because they turn their opinions into facts, and I can justify my position wherever I want, saying, well, I'm not forcing my opinions into facts on other people like they do. I'm not pretending my opinions are facts. But I mean, by using the word, it's pretty hard to justify. So I never really consider my opinions facts. I'm always questioning them. I'm always worried about them. I'm always worried I'm making a mistake. I'm making a blunder somewhere and I'm not realizing it. So I hope this helps put this matter at least in a better light. Who knows? Because yeah, look, this is not even an apology. This is simply an explanation, because it doesn't matter what I do. I could be 100% right on something. If people don't want to accept it, they won't. I can be 100% wrong on something. If people want to accept it, they will. You see that on religion all the time, to the point where they can defend indefensible things, but simply because it's something they heard from a religious operative or the result of their indoctrination, they follow it. On this channel, my objective is always to think and hopefully think together. And that's why I always tell you guys never to take my word at face value. I mean, if you choose to believe me, if you choose to trust me, know that I might be wrong. I wouldn't advise. But I mean, you can control what people want to believe or who they want to trust. If some of you miraculously think, oh, I'm going to trust what this guy says, keep this in mind. I could be wrong. But ideally, if you listen to what I say, if you find what I say interesting, check it out for yourselves. Look it up. Look at the logical framework that you can find out there. Analyze it. Question it. And form your own opinions. Form your own logical framework and bring it into the conversation. That is, in my opinion, the ideal outcome for the channel and for every one of us. That's it, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you liked this episode, please consider liking it, subscribing, sharing it. Check out X and the articles I might post there. And I hope you had a good time, maybe learned something, came up with a new hypothesis. We should test it out. And as always, I hope to see you all next time.